this is Wendy Artnowski. This is tape 17 of the 1993 Shop Series. Now, some interesting things from the world of stunt. This is a picture from Ski Dombrowski's workshop. Ski Dombrowski, of course, is the 1986 concourse winner with the lace maker. And what he's done is he's making wood blade, 3-blade props where the grain goes in the right direction at all angles. And you can see how he's notched the wood on each individual blade. These are roughly 64th laminates, and what happened, this is, by the way, how the Chinese world champions make their props. And they interlock at the hub. This is a solid steel fixture. It has pins for locating all the blade so that so obviously the angles and everything are equal. And then what you do is each succeeding blade, the laminate over the hub gets different. So there's a different, if you were to put these on here and invert some of them, turn them upside down, you would notice that the way he made these props was very interesting. Now here's some of the other pictures I took when I was down in shop. This shows about 15 or 20 laminates already in place, and of course they're on a press. What this is these are pins that locate into another side. And of course here's one that's already carved up from two normal props. What it does, the other half of this, which has the mating pins, presses down on this and squeezes the prop, squeezes all the extra glue out, and what you wind up with is a wood 3-blade prop that has the grain going in the right direction in every blade. And anybody that hasn't had the thrill of going to Ski Dombrowski's house, believe me, it's a tour. Speaking of neat prop collections, this is Dave Tribble's plane and his prop collection right in his toolbox. Nice old photo I have. Nice old picture. Jack Sheeks' old Tiger Cat twin-engine stunner. One of the best, one of the neatest. Look at this picture real close. This is some special plane. Not only do he had the Mosquito bomber and this one. I still have plans to the Mosquito available, in fact, but not to the Tiger Cat, unfortunately. Anybody has plans to this plane, let me know where I can get them. I'll start making some copies so we can preserve this for all time. Guy Markham built this classic. He's from Washington State now. The Bob Palmer designed the Skyscraper. Real nice. Look at the pilot. Check the pilot out. And like the P-51 type of arrangement on the wing. Real neat. If this plane was built similar to the plans, it has an aluminum wing spar. Kind of a cool idea. Here's Jimmy Casal and Peter Zwada from Poland. Look like they're auditioning for the commercial of Diet Pepsi, you know, where Ray Charles' part, or the Two Blind Mice, I don't know. Anyway, nice picture of Jimmy's Columbia, two-time Nats champ plane, and Peter Zwada. He's the guy that gets, actually, I'll tell you the truth, he smuggles these things out of Czechoslovakia, these great spinners that we're all using. I think even Walker's using one of them. Maybe we ought to send Walker to Czechoslovakia. Mike Rogers out at Flushing with his 83-ounce pattern master. Now, he kept telling us he wanted these green things on the wing. Listen to the true story. He had screwed up the paint here, and he thought he was going to sneak this by El Mundro. Can you imagine? No way, Mike. It's called a screw-up. Cover it up. We still know it, Mike. He finally admitted it later on. By the way, that's not an oil tanker in the back. That's Big Jim. In case you think that's an oil tank truck. Nice, neat nose section on Billy Suarez's original jet. Now, talk about a nice, neat nose section. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any neater than this. You can even see your reflection in a spinner. You can see whoever took this picture. I guess I did. The 88 Cardinal, the original Cardinal. Nice nose section. Classic good looks. Just like me. Wish I could convince my wife of that. Picture of Compostello's old, whatever, Weber 64-stroke, handmade wood 3-blade prop. Handmade wood 3-blade prop. In our motor development program of 86 and 87, this was a Super Tiger 60. We had lightened up the case and made a unique rear exhaust out of a side exhaust engine. because there was so much of a bend and restriction here, it never really did work the way we wanted to. Here's the exhaust outlet on this ship. This ship was affectionately known as the Penguin and went on to test a lot of motors, the Rossi, the HP, the OPS, the VMAXs. Did a lot of testing with. John Gajewski has this plane now, in fact, in his possession. There's the nose section of the Penguin. Black anodized, Big Jim, lightened case, balanced, reworked, whatever, 60. Didn't work with that header, though. That header was a loser. Just some more pictures before we go into the tape here of the development program. Craig Gunder worked on this with me. He made silencers that mounted inside the body. Reverse exhaust, Super Tiger 60, and I would recommend nobody try doing this. This is not a real productive way of running a Super Tiger 60. And there's what it looked like with the whole muffler inside the body here, and then a long thin tube going out the back. It was actually not a tune pipe. This is before the tune pipes were in vogue. We were trying to get this. Actually, if you go back to 1980, you'll see I had, in the published Design and Flying Models, had the exhaust inside the body on the big sweeper. This was just another variant of that. And like I said, the kink in the program was that the restriction was too much in the header. Okay, we're going to go into the tape, and we got a lot of interesting things going on in the shop, and we're going to go down, hopefully Friday, go down and videotape a demonstration of how they make the lettering, the clear vinyl lettering, the stick-on lettering. Now Russ is here today, and he brought this down for me to take a look at, get a little preliminary weight on it, see how it's going to shape up. Now this is a special Cardinal that he's building. He had Scott Smith cut the wing an inch longer each panel. Even though it's unequal panels, the outboard wing is a half-inch shorter than the inboard wing. It's extra long panels. And what he did, he made the tail a little bit longer. It has a little bit shorter tail moment arm. Of course, he used a typical, in fact, he stole my top block idea here. And I will collect, Russ. And what he did then on top of that, he put 4-inch wingtips. And if I knew he had a 4-inch block, I would have stolen it from him. But it has real nice lines here. Made the nose similar to Tradition. And if anybody's gone back in the videos, you can see how Tradition is. This ship will take a 60. It'll take a Super Tiger 51. It'll also take the VMAXs. He's done the nose pretty much similar to the way I've done it. And I guess we'll get a little preliminary weight on this right now. Get a look at just some of the things we may or may not want to put on the video that are unique about this plane. Well, one of the things, now Russ is out in Pennsylvania in the same part of the country that Frank Paskovich is, and he did the fillets up with that material, that gold bond light taping compound. And they look, from having looked at it, and I'll get Russ's comments here momentarily. And then what he did, he wiped it with hot stuff for what looks like, I guess, it's the first time I've seen this, wiped with hot stuff. It looks like a real nice way to do the fillets. But again, if we look at my planes, now mine are done with that filleting material. Let's not make a decision now. Let's look at the end of the season and see how they last. Nice looking plane, Russ. You did nice. That is the ship we competed with and did a lot of testing with last year. We tested 51s, we tested 60s, we did 46s. Did an awful lot of experimentation with it. Added a Rabe rudder. Flew several contests with it. Added these tape stripes here. That was just one of the testing things that we did. And last week when I was playing with the Griffin, I tried to rejuvenate the finish on the Griffin a little bit. I found that product, that kit product, scratch remover. And this ship is now a candidate for the same material. Really want to try to get him cleaned up. If you look real close, this ship has really taken a beating. This plane has many flights on it. Many people have flown this and had a good time flying it. But anyway, we're going to do the kit overhaul here. See if we can get this paint to buff up a little nicer now. And we were real happy with the way the Griffin came out. I don't see why this wouldn't come out either. Now, I guess I've said it on the previous video, but it bears repeating. Airplanes need maintenance, especially paint. If you don't keep a good coat of wax on them constantly, the paint oxidizes real quick. If you leave them in the sunlight, it hurts them. They deteriorate. Keep them in a damp basement like I do, they deteriorate even more quickly. And when you've gone through all the work and effort that we have to try to get a nice finish, well, heck, the last thing you want to do is see it deteriorate. Now, here's a plane that was made in 1988, actually made in 87, painted in 88, repainted in 1990. It's been through the wars, literally. And this paint, this scratch out stuff really seems to bring the paint right back up. I'm real happy with how it's been working. Again, I've tried several different ways. I've been trying to get the planes all cleaned up, and the best way I can see is right now is just like you were using rubbing compound. Use a sock. Let it fog over a little bit and wipe it dry. It really does seem to do a nice job cleaning up the paint. Kind of smelly stuff though. It's got a really pungent odor. If you just get a little idea as to how much it takes to bring the finish back up to speed. There's a couple of good points here too, a couple of good points to be made. You know, a plane is painted and you say, oh well, it's finished. Like right now I'm saying, oh, my two planes are sitting on the wall and they're basically finished. Yeah, that's true. But it's like trim. They're never really trimmed and they're never really finished. It's an ongoing, constant thing. The bounty towels and the scratch out seem to bring up an old, and these finishes really are abused. It seems to bring it up real nice though. Well, one of the things, by the way, this panel really did, looks like it really came right back up. One of the things I'm real convinced about in my own mind is, and I know it's been written several places that it's not so important to have nice looking planes. It is absolutely important to me as an individual to have nicely buffed out, especially the paintwork and especially the workmanship. It really is important to me. And I know it's important to Adamusco and Midgley and various other people. And I don't care what they write in Stunt News, and I don't care who writes it. A nicely finished, well-polished, beautiful plane, when you put that out on the front row or wherever you go to a contest, absolutely important to have that. I really feel that's probably the most important thing in my whole reason for liking this event. If these planes started to look like shoe boxes or bananas or something, and all we're worried about is the aerobatics of them, I think the event's gone. Pretty airplanes are where it's at. I was so happy with the way that paint came out. I'm just going to take this guy, and I want to see. You can probably see I can write my name in the. It's so dirty and greasy and everything. Now, the reason that I'm going to work on this plane for a while, of course, the Red Baron. What I did at the end of last season, I finished flying them. I competed at a few contests, the last of which was Johnsville. We were testing out engine modifications, and I taped a little note to the airplane as to what I wanted to change over the winter. So now, rather than having to go back to the toolbox to all my notes, I can just refer to the note and I can make the modifications necessary right now and then put him back on the wall ready to compete. So just a little suggestion, that it may seem like a small insignificant tip, but it's not really a small insignificant tip. It's a real important thing. Because now I would have forgotten what had happened at Johnsville, and I would have to refer back to the video, and I would have to use my memory, which isn't that good anymore. And so, having the little note taped right to the plane, now it's time. Both of the new planes are buffed out. They're both ready to go. and one by one I'm going to go through all my used equipment, do the modifications, get them ready for the flying season. This guy we have to make a prop up for today, and we have some bushings to replace in the back horn. I see my other note here, and replace the wheels. And so that'll be, having that little note is a nice little feature. And I'd suggest if you don't have a notebook like I have right in the toolbox, tape a note right to the wing when you put the plane away for the winter. Especially if you're old. If you're old like me. Now, thanks to that note and my lack of memory here, I want to show what I want to do on the Red Baron here as one of the projects I'm going to be doing. The Red Baron, we built it right from the get-go with a lot of slop in the elevators. But what's happened is and it's been thousands of flights, I'm sure, since 1988, we have really more than we really want as far as slop goes here in the elevators. So what we're going to do is cut a little hole on the outside of the fuselage and replace the bushing. But I want to show on, because it's an idea many people can use, I want to show one of the ways you can do this without a whole lot of problems. Now, thanks to my note on the Red Baron, I just want to show what I'm going to try to accomplish here. Now, when I said at the end of last year, the symptom that the Red Baron was showing me was that it had too much slop in the elevators. All right, so if you understand what that slop is, that slop means when you hold the flaps in neutral, the elevators should be able to move up and down maybe a 1/16, or maybe even a little more. But what's happening now is they're moving up and down 1/4 of an inch. Now, what that means is the bushing in the back normally would have a 1/8 hole if we wanted slop, and a 3/32 rod. But obviously, after thousands of flights, we now have a hole that's too big. And what we're trying to do, and I'm going to try to simplify this as much as I can, what we're trying to do is eliminate some of the slop and at the same time put a little more up elevator into the system, because the plane tended to turn outside tighter than inside. And there's a point at which you can only go so far, and then the plane won't track in level flight. So what we're going to try to do, and I'm going to blow this up, if we were to look at the elevator horn, what I'm going to try to do, now there's several ways of doing this. Number one, I could take this piece of the push rod, cut it off here with a saw. I would have to cut a relatively big hole in the side of the plane, and then put another piece of wire in, wrap it with copper wire, just like we've done on the construction series, so that there's a joint in the wire. Then I would have infinite variability, infinitely variable. I guess that's the right word. Anyway, you guys don't speak English anyway. That would be one way of doing it. Another way, and I've chosen not to do this, and I've thought about it, and I said, don't want to do it that way, would be to take the hole that's in there now and grind on it a little bit so you could offset the bushing, and then silver solder it in. Now, that would mean, ultimately, we'd look at the hole would be offset to gain a little bit of up movement. Now, this may sound like a difficult way to do it, but once a plane is built and buffed out and you have all this time, one of the last things you want to do is just go chop a big hole in it. Now, this means that on this, we only have to take a piece of razor-sharp tubing, cut a hole this size so we can get in there with a soldering iron, and that's probably going to be big enough. Or we could cut it square, it really wouldn't matter, save the piece and try to glue it back in, and then cover it with Scotch tape so oil wouldn't get in there. But again, what we're talking about now is the building season is, for me anyway, is over, and we're looking at all our old planes here, the Griffon, the green guy, and we're going to do the proper maintenance. Now, I want to go through this once, just to give you an example of, you know, what's available here as far as trim goes, with very little effort. Well, in the old days, when everybody had 3/32 horns, everything was simple. You did everything with a tweak. That meant you just grabbed it and bent it. But what happens when you use 3/32 horns, every time you wipe the plane off, you do a little bit of a tweak, or you tweak the outside more than the inside, or whatever. So in the old days, this was the vogue thing. I don't think there's many people left using 3/32 ones. There probably is one or two, but it's not a significant number that would even pay to mention it. But now with 1/8" horns, another problem crops up, is you can't tweak things. So what that means is you build, here's your wing, here's the tail, and you try to align everything just perfect, and we know, you know, this should be dead perfect, this should be dead perfect. And what we would hope would be accomplished by all this would be equal turns. Now that means when we go to do an inside turn, the inside part is the same. The corners have the same violence for all corners, violent or non-violent as the case may be, whatever trim it is. In outside maneuvers, we get that consistent round turn, and we also get equal corners. But what's important is that we get equal things, equal rounds. Now, what happens in the case of the Red Baron, what was happening is the rounds were getting kind of soft, because what was happening is the bushing was probably wearing more on one side than the other, and when I had checked it, it had a little bit less up deflection than down. I'm exaggerating this now. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get back our equal turns by making a slight adjustment here. Now, what a slight adjustment in this case is when the plane is in level flight and everything is in neutral, all of the slop will be out of the system when this is in neutral, and all the slop will come into play only on down. So we should get either more up and less down, or transfer the slop into the down direction only. And what I hope that's going to accomplish is when we go out to fly it, again, this is why you take notes, this is why you have a notebook, because right now, the last time I flew this plane was 8 months ago at Johnsville, and I didn't fly it that much the week before. I only put on a few test sessions and we're fooling with props. So I really never even remember clearly in my mind what was happening. But what we want to wind up with, and this is a great exaggeration, is we want to have more up than down now, if we could do this. And even a few degrees is a significant amount. Now, the best way, in the new planes that we just built, we put an adjustable push rod. We can get in through the pipe tunnel, heat a solder joint, and do that. But we still can't adjust the slop. The slop is one thing we're going to have to adjust from inside. On the new planes, go in through the pipe tunnel, and this way you don't have a scar on a plane. There's no slop back here. All the slop is in this horn, and we took the slop up with a bushing. Again, if you really need to refresh that, go look at the, I don't know which video it is that has the brass bushing and whatever on there. But here's the flying situation. It tighter up, tighter down. Now this is you can make this decision on your own. Okay, and I want to just make a little chart of what would be the obvious, easiest things to do. This is the way a ship flies, and it doesn't matter if it's a new plane, because what can happen is a plane that has thousands of flights on it can wear the controls in an uneven way, and all of a sudden one of these symptoms can apply. But if you have this situation, tighter up, tighter down, the first and easiest thing to do is in the handle. In the handle would be the first adjustment to make before you go cut into the airplane. And if it turns tighter down, move the down line closer to your hand. If it turns tighter up, move the up line closer to your hand, closer to the center of the handle by 1 or 2 notches. Okay? Okay, if that still doesn't do it, and there's a good chance that'll help, and that'll be the end of the problem, but maybe not. Okay, if that isn't the case, now what you want to do is go, the next logical step would be, and I'm going to make this, it may or may not make sense. If it turns too tight up, I don't know if I can show this, to make the up arm longer. If it turns too tight up, make the up arm a little bit longer. Just glue a piece of 1/8" plywood onto the front of the handle. If it turns too tight down, you do the opposite thing. And again, this is relatively easy at the field, just hot stuff on a piece of plywood with a hole in it, or with a little block. This is the sequence of things that I would go through. First, I would try moving the cable, then lengthening and shortening it. But supposing, even after all that, you still don't have equal. It's still not equal. Then I would suggest cutting into the plane. And in this case, if we have tighter up than down, then what you want to do is add a little bit of down to the controls. So that in neutral, when this is neutral, this is just a very slight bit down. If it turns tighter in the down position, which is what the Red Baron does, when it's in neutral, we want to put just a little bit of up in the system. Okay, now I don't know if you can really get a logical, this is a really important trim thing that'll help you every bit of the way. Whichever way it's, when it's unequal, and I know a lot of people don't even have a concept of what unequal is. I've flown people's planes that have flown 100 flights and say, "Wait, Wendy, fly the plane," and I fly, and oh my God, it only turns one way. A plane I remember real well was Jim Tate's Stiletto. Turned outside like it was on, dynamite was under the controls, and when you went to turn up, you had to pull on it and yank on it, and it was tremendously unequal. Now, Jim has the normal tendencies, like any skilled flyer, like that you start compensating for these things being wrong. So what's always a good idea is to have somebody else fly the plane. Have another pilot. Now, this assumes you have a friend, in your area. But if you have another pilot that can try the plane, a lot of times he can spot stuff right away. And one of the first things they'll usually spot is an unequal turn. This is an important concept. This is not a little baby thing. Now, we've taken the Red Baron, we've analyzed out what we want to do. And of course, if you want to put this into the controls, you have to make the push rod longer. If you want to do this, you shorten the push rod. The best way, now I'll just mention this is real important. There used to be a thing, used to have a 3/32 rod, a 3/32 rod, and these SIG solder links that used to go over things, and what would happen is you'd solder this, and flux would stay in the middle of the tube. And over a period of time, the acid, the flux, you couldn't neutralize it, would rot away the tube. Many people, Kevin Captanelli, Jimmy Casal, other people, I see a plane just be flying along in level flight and go right in. The link would fail. A better way is to overlap the wires at least an inch, wrap them with copper wire, silver solder them, and then deflux them. This gives you an infinite adjustment. In other words, if you're the kind of guy, and I don't do it this way, but there are people who do, you put the wing in a body, and then you like to glue the tail in place. Okay, but now the controls are all free. Now, I don't do it this way, so I'm just showing this as an example. Another way, and obviously my way is not the only way, is make the push rod, leave it, just wrap it with copper wire, and now you can get an infinite adjustment, get it all adjusted nice, adjust, and silver solder this, but be sure to deflux it. And that means baking soda and water. A mix of baking soda and water will deflux silver solder, Stay Bright silver solder. Now, I just want to mention, while we're talking about, and this will be the final thing, okay, if you have a problem with inside turns, now, I'm going to characterize this as saying the whole plane flies fine. Outside's just about the way you want it. Everything is just about the way you want it, but inside turns are slow. And this is a characteristic that I've noticed in many designs. You'll notice it especially on the triangles, especially when pulling out of the hourglass. These corners tend to get iffy. Okay, and I call this inside turn slow. It's just, that's a very slight thing. One of the things that'll help, will always help, is check vertical CG. Now, if the vertical CG is wrong, it's usually going to be that the bottom of the plane is heavier. The wheel part of the plane is heavier. And what'll cure it a lot of times is lighter wheels, or remove the wheel pants, Just getting rid of the wheel pants on some planes, and if the plane turns too fast, obviously putting wheel pants on sometimes helps. Okay? Some of these things that happen are because the vertical CG is wrong. The lighter wheels will help. You remove the pants. One of the reasons this happens is every design, you would think the ideal design would be an inline design. Let's just show, and the thrust of the propeller is here. Well, not really. I haven't found that to be what happens. The landing gear get to be long like Jack and a Beanstalk, and the plane never really looks like an airplane. It always tends to look like something that doesn't look right. We're used to looking at planes where, and I'll just go, Nobler, Pattern Master, Impact, Juno, Aries. The tail is higher, the thrust line is higher, and the wheels are lower. So what happens is if you have this imbalance, somewhere in the thing you have an imbalance, and the higher the tail is in the plane, the more it'll tend to turn unequally. And so when you have a plane like a Pattern Master that has the tail really high, you usually wind up having to take advantage of some of these trim features. And one of them is, and especially I have a note on the Red Baron, to put the lighter wheels on. I noticed I still had the 2-inch wheels. I have 1 3/4 wheels. Smaller wheels, and you can try this right at the field. Or you can move the wheels back. That means further back against the center of gravity, or you can, in combination or all of the above, you have 3 choices. You can use physically smaller, and this means lighter wheels. You can move the wheels back, or you can move the wheels up toward the body. Now that means on a typical plane, when the wheels get further and further away from the center of gravity is here, as the wheels get further and further away, their moment of inertia, and they're like little parachutes dragging on. Picture little parachutes. Well, of course, turning that plane against those parachutes, the smaller you could make the wheels, the better. Okay, so there's just a few ways that you can take advantage of things that I've learned, things that are probably common knowledge among all the top flyers, whether they've been written about or not. But if you can get these concepts in your mind when you go out to fly that plane and it doesn't turn equally, you'll have a lot of choices, a lot of ammunition, a lot of different ways to deal with the problem. Not just to say, oh, this Nobler doesn't fly so good, this plane doesn't fly, or whatever. And when you see a top-level plane, Billy Werwige's plane, or Paul Walker's plane, or Ted Fancher, when you see any of these top-level, they have thousands and thousands of trim adjustments on them. Infinite amounts of trim adjustment, and they're unending. They never stop. I'm sure Paul Walker never stops trying to squeeze more trim out of that plane. It isn't just you go to the field, fly 3 flights, and you're done. I'm just going to close this out now, and we're going to go back down to the shop. One of the most valuable tools I've ever found that I ever have is my notebook. And in my notebook, I record impressions of planes that I only fly once, planes I fly all the time, having notes about, and you've seen it today as we pulled a Red Baron off the wall after 8 months, and I had a note attached to it, what to do to this plane. And now it refreshes my mind. Now I can go about figuring out and engineering up the job of changing that control system over. A notebook is going to save you time, save you energy, make you a happy pilot. Get a notebook. And with that, let's go back down to the shop. It's getting late. I don't know how much more time we have. Get a notebook and use it. Now, as per what I said before, what we're going to do is get rid of the 2-inch wheels. These are 2-inch Dave Browns that have been hogged out and rounded out. And what I'm going to do is install a set of these, and these are really super light. These are the ones that are made for electric airplanes. They're about half the weight and half the thickness of the normal Dave Brown wheels. Remember, what we're trying to do is increase the inside turn. And putting on lighter wheels will definitely, just from the drag alone, even if the weight was the same, you wind up with a little increase in the inside turn. So the first thing we'll do is get rid of the wheels and switch over to the electrolyte wheels. Yeah, you can see the difference in the diameter, not only the diameter, and the thickness of the wheels. And this is what accounts for the weight reduction. Again, this is a good idea, assuming you're going to fly. We're only going to fly the Red Baron on pavement. We're not going to fly in grass anymore. So it's a good idea to, if you're going to fly in grass, obviously you have to bite the bullet here and leave the big wheels on. I wouldn't fly over grass with these. But for the tar, Flushing, Bradleys, these will be fine. Now one wheel is 13 grams. And one of the electrolyte wheels is 6 grams, 5.9. So that means 2 of these wheels are a little bit less than one of the old wheels. Now, I include one of the things you want to think about, you're lightening up the wheels. And you can see the Red Baron here has a trim tab. Now what it means is the vertical CG is going to change just a little bit. So we're going to have to make up for that, in this case, with the trim tab. I'll just bend the trim tab up about another 10 degrees or make it a little bit larger in area to compensate for the fact that I'm losing my weight on the vertical CG. Another way to do this is if you're going to remove weight off the bottom of the CG, remove kind of the same amount off of the spinner. See how high the spinner is on the thrust line? If we can get a little bit lighter spinner on there maybe, a lighter propeller, a lighter prop nut, we can balance out. One will balance out the other and I won't have to change the trim tab. So knowing ahead of time in which direction this is going to have to go will be a big help to us. Okay, that's step one in our little overhaul. Now we want to get at that tail bushing. Try to get that slop out of the up position. And then that'll pretty much complete the Red Baron overhaul, and he'll be ready for some more testing come the good weather. What we're trying to do is get our whole Air Force in shape here while we have time. Now you can see where I'm laying out the little hatch here. I started cutting it. It's a good idea to lay this out in tape ahead of time if you want to make a really nice repair. And like in this case, I want this when I'm finished, hopefully, to look like an ink line or a hatch that's supposed to be here. It's always the hardest getting down by the fillet, trying to cut down in there. The material is hard. And obviously you want to save the little piece. Now if you can see the horn moving around the push rod, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. You can see the slop has really worn in there from probably 2,500 flights over 5 years. And that's what we're going to do now, is just replace that bushing in the horn. Now step one always seems, get out the Sikkens M600 or some degreasing agent, get in there and get rid of all the grease around the push rod end. Now in this case what we're going to try to do is unsolder the washer, which should be relatively easy. Clean off all the grease first, unsolder the washer, and slide the bushing right over the push rod, and then solder the washer back. Now because we have these all safety wired, if you know how I put this in with a notch and everything, you really have to get in there very carefully. Get all the grease off of that, and again, just another use for Sikkens M600. It'll make, otherwise when you go in there with the soldering iron, what you can guarantee will happen is you'll have a smoke storm. So this way, by just pulling off the washer and the little piece of wire, what I'm hoping is going to happen is I'll be able to slide the little copper bushing, like a copper eyelet, right over the push rod and take up all the slop. And of course it pays to spend some time getting it clean. Well, it's a good idea too, before you go in there with a soldering iron, protect where the solder might fall, you know, with some tin foil or some newspaper or whatever. Tin foil seems to be a good thing. Get some tin foil around it, and now we can get in there with the soldering iron, pull off that washer, and then make up a bushing. Because the easiest way I know of is just heat the bushing and heat it and kind of pull it off with the pliers. Now in the case of if you have the little thing safety wired, a lot of times you have to heat it and kind of pry the wire out. In this case I got to pull the wire out. Right, here comes the wire. Okay, now I just got to heat the bushing up. Okay. Now what I'm going to do to replace this, I'm just going to take a little bushing, and this is a press-in bushing that goes on Pro Stun Products horns, and reverse it. So the big side goes in, and then I'll wire on the outside and solder the outside. So I'll actually be using this part as the bearing surface. It'll be reversed. And if you didn't want to do this, by the way, you could cut a little piece of 1/8" copper tubing. That would be just fine too. Now you can see what I did. I put a little fishhook on the end of the wire so I can pull on the push rod, get all the clearance out, and then push the bushing in. And now I'll pull on the wire, take the clearance out of the bushing, and just solder it right back up. It's important to pull on the wire and keep the tension while that solder is cooling off. Now, of course, we'll get the defluxing agent on the Q-tips, get it defluxed, get rid of the wire. You can just see what I did. I just put a fish hook on the end of it. Just to pull on it, make sure we have no clearance now, or very little clearance. And don't forget the old baking soda and water trick. Get some baking soda on that joint. The baking soda neutralizes the acid. You won't get any corrosion after a year or so. Year, we're looking at, you know, hopefully getting another 10 years out of this plane. And this is just a periodic maintenance that, okay, we have about 1/3 less slop in the controls now. We've taken up a lot of the slop. Now, what's always a good idea, of course, how we get rid of the tin foil here. What's always a good idea is before you go and glue that piece back in with epoxy or hot stuff or whatever, I like to take some clear Scotch tape, put the Scotch tape on top of it, and just hold the hatch in with Scotch tape in case I want to go in there and take more clearance out, or put the clearance back in. You never do know. Or in this case, I may want to lengthen the push rod a couple of thousandths just to see if that's going to help. Anyway, this should make a major change. This is a major trim change when you slop in and out of a plane, because what it does, it allows the flaps to move more or less. In effect, it increases the size and the ratio of the elevators to flap movement. A radical change, just a couple of thousandths, can make a big change in the way a ship flies. So we'll tape that little hatch on now, and we'll fly it before we actually glue it back in. Now before we seal the little hatch up, I just want to get a couple drops of motorcycle chain lube in there. Now we just seal it up now. Wipe the surface down where the tape is going to go with M600 and tape it up. Just so the tape sticks a little bit better, we'll wipe this down with M600. Wipe the hatch itself down with M600. Now, before we put the Red Baron away, what I'm doing is watching on television. Just trying to look at some of the old flights from last year. Get a little feel for if there's any other little things I want to do to this guy before I put him away. This will pretty much be ready to go next year. Let's hope so anyway. What I'm really looking for is that softness in the inside turn. Again, this is where having videos will help you. Now, I can go back to the... Actually, right now, while I'm working on a Red Baron, I can go back to the Johnsville contest. See, the outside corner is much more violent than the inside corner. But that's what having the videos and having a library of videos can do for you. It can really be a big help somewhere down the road. And again, we're not going to belabor this point, but we're going to go work on some other projects now. The Red Baron will get put on a wall, and we're finished with him for a while, let's hope. Alright, so the Red Baron should be ready now, let's hope, for his first test flight. Once we get the weather to break, he's one of the planes we're going to be flying. Before we actually go fly on new planes, I like to get some flights on these old ones and just get back into the swing of things. Now we have a little time here now that we can carve up or cut out our wheel pants, and we usually try to use up the scrap that's left over from top blocks when we do this. Again, I made this template just to my own taste, and usually what I do is I go get last year's wheel pants, take a look at them, see what if I want to make them longer, shorter, and whatever. I'm not going to go into a long dissertation about wheel pants now because I'm not actually going to be able to make them. I'm only going to be able to cut them out and carve them to shape. So I'll be one step ahead, and remember, I do have that big job on the other house to work on. So that's going to set me back, but I will try to get them carved out and maybe even hollowed out and just sitting here ready for after we test fly the plane and get the landing gear locations exact, then I can bend up another pair of wires and probably make these up in one day. Okay, this is step one. I've taken the scrap piece from a top block and tried to squeeze in. The thickness is not really important. It can be anything from 3/4 up, because you're going to carve it all the way anyway, depending on what shape you have. And the next step, of course, is to tack glue two of them together. So now we have the cores and we're ready to start carving up the wheel pants. A little tip, now you see the grain is going here when I got the last one, so I tried to get the last, I had to angle it up in the block to try to get the grain isn't going just perfect on this. So what I'll try to do when I get this on the plane, I'll have this be on the inside that faces the fuselage and have the good one be on the outside that faces out. Again, you usually can get right out of the piece that's missing when you cut up the top block, right at the end where the back of the fuse tapers down. You usually can get one wheel pant on each side if you play your cards right. Okay, so here's the construction sequence of things so far. And we'll get a brand new number 26 blade and start carving up.
Station and Joe Walt. More complete.
Now what I try to do is look at them from all angles and make sure they're real close to being the same. Eyeball them up, and whichever one is the biggest, you know, sand it down some more. Now it looks like this one's a little thicker than this one. Just doing it by eyeball. And whichever one is the thicker of the two or the longer of the two, make it match the smaller one. I want to get them kind of even in size and even in profile before we start the hollowing operation. Don't forget we have to make 2 sets of these, one for each of the new ships. So just getting this much done, getting this much carved and hollowed, we're this much ahead of the game now, that's for sure. And it's real nice to be a little bit ahead instead of a little bit behind. You want to kind of get the radiuses in the front equal to, whichever one is the more pointy, blunted out. Radiuses in the back equal. Okay, we'll just split them open here. There's always some little pieces that hang up. I try to keep them in pairs. The next step is we're going to use our finger and run a line down. I want to hollow this roughly to 1/8 inch wall thickness. Now you have 2 choices. We can gouge these with a gouge, or we can set up the vacuum and a Dremel tool and grind away at it with the Dremel tool. And what we'll do in effect is just turn this into 2 clamshells. And all we're using is that line for an indicator of how far into it we can hollow it out.
And David, platforms that run away in the United Center and because of emergency vehicles.
How easy is that?
I got the carbide ball bit on a Dremel tool. I like to hang the Dremel tool from the ceiling when I do this kind of work. And if possible, you could put the vacuum cleaner somewhere near the work, turn the vacuum on, and let it suck up all the dust. That's a nice way to do it if you can arrange it. Sometimes you can put the vacuum right in your lap, have the hose coming up between your knees, and just grind away at it, and it sucks up all the dust. Carbide cutters are really good for doing this, grinding out the inside of these kind of shapes. Okay, now you see what I've done. I've put all the scratches in going this way. So now, if you look at the piece real close, you'll see there's a lot of scratches. I'll hold this up to the light. Any spot that's starting to get too thin and you can see pink light through, just mark it with a red pen. Now I'm going to take the tool and go from side to side. So now all the scratches will go side to side. Okay, now you can see all the scratches are going side to side. Now, if I want to go through, I'm going to hold this up to the light. Although it feels about right now. The next pass, I'll go sideways. So what you're doing, you're always going sideways and then this way. And you keep putting the scratches. Now, as I take out the scratches, I know I'm getting an even wall thickness. I'm taking an even layer out. I'm not taking out big chunks and in all thin spots. And I can run my fingers back down this, and my hands are pretty well trained from doing tool and die work to just feel where there's a thin spot. This looks pretty good. But again, the next pass will be front to back. Now, there's a little bit of a funny story to this. Mike Rogers brought a top block over here one time when Midgley and I were doing things. And he said, here's my top block. It's like, I don't know, 30 ounces or something. It doesn't pay to sand inside and get out all that extra little material. It doesn't make any difference. So what happened, while Mike was out at the store or whatever he did, we took his top block and hollowed it out to 19 grams. And when he came back, he was shocked. He said, I didn't know you could get that much material out just by sanding the inside smooth. And of course you can. Don't let anybody give you a song and dance. The inside of the plane should be finished just as nice as the outside. And when I become emperor, that's the way it's going to be. Okay, just wanted to show just about how long it really took. Now, we have a pretty nice little clamshell, boat shell, whatever you want to call it. And we'll just do the other three off camera. And I had about 15 minutes before I have to leave and get out of here tonight. So what I did, I made up a reel. You know how everybody's making fun of my new plane and saying it's a Harley, it looks like a Harley? So I made up a reel. It says not a Harley, and I'll put the lines that are going to be on this plane. I know Midgley's laughing right now. I can hear him. Anyway, we're going to go down to the club meeting tonight. We're going to get a demonstration of the decal making process, and it might or might not be interesting. You might or might not want to order some of the stuff from the guy that's going to put on a demo. So it's snowing out there a little bit right now. We hope we're going to get down there and capture this on video for you, get a couple minutes of video. It might be something you find very interesting or useful in the future. Not a Harley. George, how about a little show and tell here?
Show what and tell about it.
What is this now? Dynajet?
Remember Joe Coles' jet?
Yeah, I still have parts of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what it's built from, his plans.
Oh, great. Obviously didn't fly it yet.
No,
I don't see any
finished
burn
a couple weeks ago.
Looks
Well,
cool.
you gotta look. You're looking at the wrong end. You gotta look at the back end for burn marks.
And what features on this work? Flaps?
Nothing.
And nothing? Just,
Dynajet. You can't do anything with it.
that's it, huh?
That's why it's not going to be in a scale
You guys call it,
airplane.
you get in line to come to our concert.
no
you
option.
showing interest or anything? You have to go do anything?
What do you mean, like with the modern rules, it wouldn't be competitive with...
That's right. Who needs it? I want to take it to Johnsville, though, and try to put a name to the word. Anyway, you know.
Well, maybe I'll have a piece of this one to match the piece I have of his shit.
You might.
Nice guy, you know.
You might.
I'll bring a bag.
Get some of that tailpipe. That tuned pipe in the back.
Bobby Hunt's probably over here. Richie Tower.
You should hit a tune.
Okay, hit it, George. This is a carbon pipe or aluminum? What is
Yeah, right.
You should hit a tune that one,
It
please.
turns bright red.
Another Hattori pipe.
Light that sucker up now.
Sounds like a banshee.
Open a little hatch up, George. Let's see what it looks like inside.
It's just the edge of the tank. The insulation.
All ready to go, huh?
Ready to boogie. That's
When are you planning on test flying this?
Well, I want to run it first, and the weather gets nice.
Bench run it to break the engine.
Well, just to see if it runs, if the tank engine combination's all right, you know.
I ran one on a stick in my yard, and the stick got loose. It would fly. I was scared to hold it. It looks cool. Now, is this the stuff he's going to show tonight, the decal
Yeah, the
stuff?
vinyl stuff, yeah.
This is all the vinyl stuff
Yep.
you made?
Every bit of it.
I'm dying to see what that looks like.
When I was in high school, we had a science assembly.
The guy never comes.
Someone invited to be quiet. Everybody go like that.
Yeah. That's what Ken Davis does even today. Assemblies, everything is full runners.
Now, George, all of these transfers are the things that he's made for you?
Well, the real tiny stuff is still decals. He
The
can't
tiny
get, he can't get it down that
You can't get it
small,
down that small, but,
No, but-
these are all things he's made, these things
no.
here.
Right, this, the rescue, the danger, jet intake in front here, all the stars and bars, all the navies, Columbus.
Yeah. Vic Macaluso's going to bring that albatross to the stunt forum. Yeah, that's got a lot of little
Yeah, it's a
features.
big airplane, yeah.
Holy
I
big.
saw pictures of that, yeah. I didn't
Yeah.
know it personally.
I got some video of it. It looks real nice. Neat.
What I'm trying to say here is, they want to do the 4 flights again, and I don't know how many airplanes.
Leave one for him, pass it down.
Now, Bill Reynolds is going to do a little, this is what we came to the meeting for. Bill Reynolds is going to show a little bit of his vinyl lettering, and you've seen it all on that Sabre jet. All of that lettering was done by Bill, and we'll see what he's going to do for a little demo here.
Ooh, that should fit on my lock key. You like that?
You got the joke? We'll do it. And how do you like like this. Oh, there's a new club called Torpedoes in Brown Brook.
You can enlarge the Super Tiger decal, can't you?
Okay, anybody who wants their newsletter, please see me.
I get the goddamn report.
I'll give them out. Don't touch the goddamn.
Scan from preview drawings. George supplied me of his Sea Fury.
All right, this is the jet that George has here tonight. This is the scan, and you actually made the decals right from this scan.
Right. This is the computer drawing that I always draw first.
Okay.
Before I turn it into a final cut. Where his business card was scanned and turned into a magnetic for the side of his truck.
Okay, so you can enlarge it, or obviously shrink it down too at the same time.
And it can be made, any custom design can be made, turned into a vinyl transfer, and put on to any aircraft. And the good part about it is I can make two of this side for top and the bottom. I can make two smaller, identical to match on the side of the fuselage or the tail.
There'll be an exact match.
And they will be exactly the match.
Now, what does something like this cost, Bill?
The general scan is approximately $20.
Okay.
And then depending on the size, square footage.
I mean, like George's decal here, the jet decal, what does a sheet like that cost?
Something like that would run you a couple bucks because there was a lot of scanning involved. You're probably looking a total of probably about $100.
Okay, but for $100 you have all the lettering
You
that's
get
on the
all
plane.
the coloring, all the lettering, ready to stick on. One shot. And the vinyl that I use is 3M high performance vinyl. It's 2 mils thick and it's hot fuel proof up to 12% nitro.
And did you ever try to put lacquer on top of this, clear lacquer?
Yes, you can put any clears on it except for butyrate dopes. Sickens, any of the
But the dope does eat it up?
dope will eat it up. We had some success spraying very light coats of dope over it. And just building up gradually. But if you want to do it,
What you want to do is use spot repair thinner if you want to go over this. Just use dope and spot repair thinner, you can go right over it.
using the transfer sheet that comes with it, I can scan and make a decal out of it. Now that'll just come peel off in one shot, just the lettering. It can be applied the exact same size that comes with the kit. That's already been, from the manufacturer of the kit, figured out. So in the process, I'll be doing the entire decal sheet and turning it into a vinyl transfer. Pull straight across, and it's perfectly centered and spaced. I have over 160 different letter styles and in over 100 different colors.
I know.
So from the letter styles, they contact me, I can send out to them a flyer explaining the fonts and the letter and the colors. And what you'll get back is your AMA number or whatever else type of lettering. You receive it just like that. The letters are pre-spaced and sit on a piece of carrier. When you get that, the only thing you have to do is hold it upside down. It's the easiest way it comes apart.
When you go back, the block kicks over on 5 and has the Russian wall. If you go to the 7-Eleven, you got to come back to it. I mean, you can't miss it.
Peel it back. I'll stick it on here as if this was my wing. You just have to make sure that the wing is clean. Any oils or dirt or dust. And draw a center line because the bottom edge of the transfer tape is set up to the bottom edge of the lettering. So use that as your straight edge. Draw your straight edge mark. You line up your points. Apply it to the wing. Just rub in the carrier with a little bit of pressure. Doesn't take a lot.
Russell used these letters on last year's plane and they came out real nice. He had somebody else do it, but they did work real nice.
This is I didn't take the time to clean this.
You know what's a good trick is take Sickens M600, wipe the surface before you put that down. And as soon as you put it down, hit it with a hairdryer. The hairdryer locks it right in.
What I found, if you use wet, if you put it down wet, use 3 drops of ivory liquid, spray bottle of water, and you can spray it down.
Yeah, yeah.
You can put it on, float it on, especially if you have different compound curves or a wing with a loose covering. You can float it on with that, you wipe it down. As soon as you have it all worked out, nice and loose, take a hairdryer. You run a hairdryer and dry it up, and then peel it off nice and slow that way.
Yeah.
And it adheres itself.
We found out the hairdryer was the trick to get it on.
Within 12 hours after application, it almost like it dries. And then to get it off, you really have to scrape or use another hairdryer to heat it up and pull it off. But like I said, on this thing here, shows how small it can go.
What's the smallest you can go down to? About a quarter of an inch?
That's an eighth of an inch right there. Eighth of an inch, and I can go all the way up to...
Now another idea, if you print this out, okay, a person could also cut this out with a razor blade and just use it for a pattern, what Jimmy and I were talking about, to make a mat, to do airbrushing.
I have a material called stencil mask made by 3M. It's almost just like the white masking tape, where it cuts it out the same way.
Oh, it makes you a mask.
Oh, you gotta give me a mask too.
Yeah.
You don't have to cut it.
This is the mask material. It's made by Gerber, another company with 3M. And when the computer cuts it out, this one was just done on.
See, I'm guessing most people would want to make the lettering match the color of the plane or something. That would be the...
Do that.
And what you do is instead of peeling off like that, is if you were going to use letters,
pull out the letters.
Pull out the letters.
I got you. Yeah.
Just like that.
Now you got a mat you can airbrush.
You can
pull it right up.
You put the carrier tape over the mat, over the transfer that way.
Right.
You apply the whole thing to the wing, pull it off the same way.
And the mat is right in place. All letters are lined up. Oh, that frisket.
You spray paint it.
The only one on the planet that does that.
And then you peel it off. You can also just use the negative.
I missed it.
Very easy. And that would be for...
Where were you when I was doing the Red Baron?
You're in the stencil, man.
4 months of doing lettering. Yeah.
Scale guys.
Yeah.
George's plane
It showed through. You swear it was painted.
Yeah, it looked real nice. I was impressed. It
on
looked real
George's plane, something like that would probably take you several weeks.
And you'd never get it perfect.
Everything else.
Like that word Columbus, you'd never get that word. I don't care how much frisket.
We're building a cup for a guy, right?
Yeah.
Stand the cup, put the cup, the bear on it.
And the thing is, Sue, is these were taken right off the 3D drawings.
Yeah, so you know they're accurate.
They are accurate to the 3D drawings, which you will be showing a judge to judge from. This can be done with about 3 hours worth of work, complete from start to
amazing.
finish.
Yeah, that's really an amazing
Maybe another hour or two to stick the things on.
An hour to put everything on.
So within
Peeling it off and putting it back on.
So within 4 hours, you were completely done with the airplane, ready for your clear coat.
George, how many hours would it take you to do the jet with paint, really?
Oh, right.
I mean, forget about it. Yeah, I know when Lou Dutka did the F-16, he was becoming an alcoholic at the end of the job.
3 samples, anybody wants to try it. A quickie.
Well, if anybody's interested, you have Bill Reynolds' phone number. Give the man a call.
Company's name is Signworks. Contact me at area code 201-328-7446.
Yeah, I scanned your sign there. If anybody's interested.
So if anybody has any custom work, they can give me a call. Like I said, the letters can be slanted. I have script. These are just some very basic.
Yeah, I just did a whole tape on how to do lettering with an airbrush. I wish I had that stencil. You should see what a job I turned
Another World War I.
Next year.
Anybody wants to
You
try
don't
it?
like the Brooklyn Dodgers? It's always next year. It's always next year, Augie. Trust me. Okay, so I thought you'd like to see that little demo, and that's how all the lettering on this ship was done, all of the little numbers. You saw how the scan was done. And you can give Bill a call if you're interested in doing some Red Baron lettering. I'm sure Walt Russell with the Rare Bear will be interested in this. It's a neat idea, and I'll be trying this next time I build a plane for sure. Now I had him do me up a little sample of the cardinal lettering. See how that's going to look. I don't know what we're going to use this on, but we'll use it. Now Russ is back in the shop today. Going to start working on putting the clear coats in the tissue on this guy today. Now what I like to do, and it's documented on all the videos of course, I like to get the paint, well, maybe 60% thinner, 40% light coat. And what we're doing here is using up that light coat that had the dark tint to it, because on the bottom coats you won't even see it. And a nice wide brush, and if anything, because it's a real cold day out there, even a little bit extra thinner to let it soak. Now I usually put 3 coats on, but in this case we're probably going to put 4 because we're putting the paint on real thick. I want to get a lot under the, haven't seen that last thing with Jim Damarel. I want to make sure we have enough clear under the tissue. Make sure we don't get any runs on this. A couple of tips when you're painting on the original coats. Now, one of the problems a lot of people have is the original coats of clear that go on the raw wood. A lot of people put them on too thick, and that almost guarantees when you go to pull the tape up, you're going to pull up the tissue. Getting the tissue to stick to the wood is real important, and the easiest way I know to do it is use a very wide brush. The bigger the brush, the better. This is a 1-inch house brush, and get it plenty thin and put on extra coats. And rather than put on 3 real thick coats, put a little more thinner in the paint, put on 4 or 5. Until you see a little bit of a gloss on the wood, then you know you have enough material. You can sand it down with 400, dust it off a little bit, and then get on, you know, the tissue. Double O would be my first choice. Jap tissue would not be a choice at all. Now, I just wanted to show what we did to the back plate. Try to lighten up the back plate on this an Aero product spinner here. Get out some of the weight by putting some 1/4-inch holes in the back plate, and then polishing up. We did a nice job polishing up the spinner. You saw the way Don polished it up on a previous video. Same thing with the compound and a 1200 sandpaper, and you can see it comes out pretty much looking like chrome, the whole spinner. You can see the nice finish we have on this. Much nicer than the way it comes, you know, when you buy one. Of course, they don't polish it. And of course, if anybody wants one of these polished, send it to me. And send me a $10 bill and I'll polish it up like a mirror for you. In fact, send a $50 bill. Send me a $1,000 bill. Send me the mortgage to your house. What a guy. How come I'm poor if I'm so small? This is the 3rd coat, Russ?
Yes.
All right, we should be ready to do some tissue in here soon.
It's really coming out nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Get 3 coats on. Let's get 4 coats on. Let's not fool around. I don't want to have one of those Damarel instant removable Jap tissue jobs here. Let's get some dope under the tissue.
Quick release cover.
A plane with that big of a wing, it can carry around some extra tissue paper. It's not a problem. Really done a good job to try to get that seal. But if you do strip one out, it can't be drilled down to 832. You have to do a head or 2. Now we're getting to do some of the tissue work here. We got 4 coats of clear on. Always a good idea when you're doing this kind of tissue work, brand new razor blades or knives, you get nice clean cuts. Always important when you do the flap or an elevator or whatever, do one side, flip it right over and do the other side. Don't let one side dry. Yep. Just want to dampen up the tissue. In this case we're using Windex. All this is documented earlier in the video. But just trying to give Russ a little hands-on little expertise help here with his little project. And this is always good if you can find somebody that'll at least walk you through one piece or at least get you the videos to watch. Then when you go to do it, you got a fighting chance of getting it done. If you got to do this stuff all on your own, oh my God. If you knew how many Shark 45s I destroyed. Oh, I tried to do this with heavy paper, Jap tissue, newspaper, ambroid, glue, epoxy. Oh my God, unbelievable. Oh yeah, we don't want to have the Jimmy Damarel quick release finish option. Holy mackerel. That's a significant thing though. You don't know how many planes I've had. You pull a masking tape up and up comes the finish. Oh boy, we saved weight. We don't have any dope under the tissue. What a great weight saver that is. Forget about it. Put some dope under the tissue. No way.
Dope's cheap.
And the most important thing is, the worst thing you can do is dope one side of a flap and then let it dry. The really important thing is get one side done, flip it right over, do the other side. Same thing with a wing. Anything that has, you know, two equal sides where you don't want it to warp. Get both sides wet, both sides dry. And if you really do, let's say, here's an example, if you had to go answer the phone or whatever before you could do the other side, then quick put another coat of wet dope on the side that's wet, so that the other side is wet. And this way you don't have, let me just pick this up for a second, Russ, I want to show us. See what happens, how it bows? You see the bow in that? Okay, that's what happens if you don't do both sides at the same. So we gotta, you know, flip it over and get the other side done right away, at least within a half an hour or so before it dries up.
Looks pretty good. There.
Now we're trying to get even a little hinge pockets, a little piece of tissue in the hinge pockets. And where the horn goes, in the edges, we fiberglass the flaps. We'll get some double tissue and go out past the edge of the fiberglass by 1/8 of an inch or so. So it kind of blends that in a little better. Now see, that's a good technique too. Just put some dope on the end of your finger and just press it right down. That's one of the things especially edges. When Midgley was here, I was trying to work on edges with him, get the edges nice. What an important thing it is. When they appearance point the plane, they just run their hand around the edge of the plane. Edges should be really nice. And they're easy to do, but you just have to pay enough attention to them. Yeah, that's it, just rub them down. And when you sand every edge. Don't just assume the edges will go away, you know, on their own. If you radius it each time you paint right up to the color, when you put that color on, it'll be perfect.
Chill on edge here.
Get the edges to stick right down, that's it. And the little hinge pockets too. Just rub them right down with your finger, that's all. Hey, look who's here. Oh no! Oh, the boss is here. Oh no! The supervisor from hell.
We gotta work now, Wendy.
Uh-oh, we gotta work harder now.
We gotta start rolling.
Yeah, I thought I heard a cash register ring.
No more smoke breaks now.
Oh man, no coffee breaks, no Midgley breaks.
That's right.
No phone calls, nothing.
Right.
Now, Russ is starting on the bottom of the wing. Obviously, you've heard me many times say always do the bottom first. And the trick here is, let's get the bottom down, have the tissue on here, get a nice wet coat on. As soon as this is dry to the touch a little bit, or as soon as possible, we'll flip it over and do the top. Not go on. Now, a mistake always is to do one wing and then go over and do the other part of the bottom wing. That's the worst of all worlds. The best of all worlds is get one side done, and while it's still wet, flip it right over and do the other side. Now you get to the tip like that, just brush it right down, force it down. Force it down with your fingers with the brush. If it doesn't want to lay down, pick it right up and force it right down again.
Coming along pretty good.
Again, the biggest single help here is going to be have a big brush, at least a 1 inch, 1.5 inch brush. I've even done it with 2-inch brushes when I'm in a rush. And don't be afraid to pull it up if you have a wrinkle. Press it down with your finger, whatever seems to work for you. And always try to get one surface done and flip it over and get the other side, whether it's an elevator or a flap or a rudder or whatever. That's the best way to kind of avoid warping. Press it right down, especially the edges. Now, because we're cutting this tissue while it's still wet, want to get I gave him a brand new surgical blade. Just put a little bit of pressure on the tissue, pull it away, and it'll cut right down. That's the easiest way I know of to get that done. Because while it's still wet, and you can see the shine on it, while it's wet, we want to just pick it up and go right, flip it over, and get the other side of the wing done. And this is even more important if you have a built-up or an I-beam wing, especially an I-beam wing where it's all tissue, is because you want to get the shrink equal and the drying equal. You know, you don't have to rush it. You don't have to go crazy, but again, right now, you don't want to go, you know, watch a movie on TV or something. Because in an hour, hour and a half, that wing is going to start to buckle up. And that's it. Just go right down the edge. On one of the videos, I can't even remember which one, I did a lot. I put the paper down and I just took my bare hands and stuck it in a can of dope and rubbed it right down. I don't think I had a good 1-inch brush at the time. Worked fine. No problem at all. See those little wrinkles? They'll come right out. You don't have to go crazy, but if you can pull them out, it's nice. Just going to save you a little bit of work somewhere down the road.
It's pretty good. Just get this trailing edge here. Okay.
And of course, we're using Windex here to wet the tissue. I really like getting the tissue on wet, not dry. And just make sure you don't leave any, any big spots that are dry on there. That could be the only thing where you won't get it. You'll have one of those Damarel instant removable finishes.
We don't want any?
No. And this, for anybody that needs to know or wants to know, 00 tissue, always 00 tissue on this kind of a ship, and medium silk span, anything that has open bays. Anywhere you have, nobler type construction, I-beams.
Careful sometimes.
Yeah, just pick away at the wrinkles, pick away at the wrinkles. That's it.
Work it with your fingers there.
Now, if it happens to be that you wind up, you get a piece like this tissued, and what happens, you turn around, it's a little bit too wet. It really shouldn't, at this point in time, be wet. What you run the risk of is that the sheeting is going to buckle up and ripple up. Just take some paper towels and wipe it a little bit. Just press it down, blot it out, and then you put the dope right on. In this case, because we're using Windex instead of water, the Windex just evaporates a lot faster, makes it a lot neater and easier of a job. And that's it. Just press it right down, especially the edges. That was really one of the only things that was wrong with Midgley's plane, was the edges, that he really needed to have a little extra work on. Just the edges.
More stuff in there, Wendy.
And this is one of the nice things we can do in this shop, in the shop environment here, is we get a bunch of guys together and we can help each other, and there's certain people in our crowd that do certain things very well, and when you share that information with other people, it really works out well. Now, Midgley's had a lot of good ideas this year. Certainly, in all the time I've known, our crowd of people, Joe Ortiz and Jim Damarel, whoever, everybody seems to have little techniques and little tricks and little things we can share, and this is the way we can kind of get them all on video, and hopefully, the people that live out in God knows where land, where, they don't have anybody around to help them figure this out, well, I think just by watching these videos, you're going to get a lot of good information out of it.
If I do this,
a lot of good help. You can wrap that around, sure.
A little bit.
Sure, just wet the tissue with dope. Wet it, leave it, that's it, and just, let it dry, because now we don't care about this wing panel. Once you have the big part done, it's not going to warp. That's it.
runs there, but I thought I might just...
I think the biggest mistakes I've ever seen people that had this is they get the tissue too wet. You just need the tissue damp. Or they try to put too little dope underneath it in some kind of an idea like they're going to save weight or whatever. Or they try to use some material other than 00 and it doesn't seem to work as well. I tried to do this with heavy silk span. Oh my God, forget about it. Medium, you can do it, yeah, it's okay, but the best, when you really want that the really ultimate nice light finish, dope and 00 is the way to go, right up to the silver.
How's that way now?
Yeah, that looks fine. Hi, Rich Peabody's here, and we got one of the foam wings he has. Here's a Cardinal foam wing, has a split in the sheeting. And what we did, we heated up a little epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, just rubbed it back down there. And what I'm doing is just hitting it with a hair dryer. Just get a little bit of heat in there so it can go back down. And press, just get it even. In fact, this just fell right into position, Rich. Let's see if we can get this on the macro lens here. Here's the split right here, you can see it. You know what I do, after this epoxy dries up, Rich, just take a little bit of DAP and go right over the top here.
Right.
And that'll sand, because that epoxy will sand right out with a block when we're finished. That's a good little way of repairing a little spot on a foam wing here. That's a little Cardinal foam wing. Save it. I'm picking up a little bit of the job on the wheel pants here. I wanted to make these like clam shells that come apart, kind of like the way Paul Walker does it. I like that. That's a nice way to do it. So I made the clam shells, of course, on video a couple of days ago. And now what I want to do is make 2 frames in here of 64th plywood. That'll be the next step. And lay out the screw locations. So what I have is 64th plywood here, and I just traced out the wheel pant shape on it, and now I'm going to remove a section in the middle here so that I can lay out the bolt pattern. I want to have a bolt in the front and a bolt in the back. Alright, now here I have the piece that I'm going to cut out of here. Now one of the reasons for doing this is I want to be able to, under normal conditions I would want to make the wheel pants after I flew the plane, but I'm going to be busy doing work on houses, so I'm kind of get as much of this work done ahead of time, framing these up. Even if they're a little wrong, I'm going to have to live with them this year, because once I go into the house reproduction business here, which looks like about 2 weeks from now, I won't be able to get much done. So I'm going to try to work on this, and of course I'll videotape what I do. I want to cut this piece out as the next step, get the inside piece. And the reason for doing this basically so you can change from bigger to smaller wheels, heavier to lighter wheels, or in the case of Dave Brown wheels, as they wear out, you can replace them. Well, what I do here is just take some thick CA. Now the idea is when you press the wheel pant down onto the plywood, to keep it pressed flat against the glass so that the plywood becomes the edge then. And you want to use some thick CA because these blocks are not totally true after you make them this hollow. Always nice to try to use up, you don't think I'm cheap, do you? The last little bit of CA here. Alright, so I get a little bit of the thick CA, and what I do is hit the kicker onto the plywood. Make sure you get it lined up on the first shot or you don't get a second chance. And press it down tight onto the trick here is to get that surface to break even, get it flat onto the glass. If it's not flat onto the glass, you're not going to get a, when you go to take them apart, you're going to have 2 bananas instead of 2 nice straight pieces. Okay, and all we have to do now is just rough cut this out for now. And once we get all the bolts and screws in, while the bolts and screws are in place, then you can do the final sanding and shaping and tapering and whatnot. Of course, when you have fuselage gear, you don't have to do this. You can just remove the whole wheel pant in one piece. But when you have wing gear, you got to be able to split, somehow get the wheel out if you want to be able to switch the wheels. So a little more work, a little more effort, but if you want that trim feature on a plane, it's like you have to pay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is get the thin CA out. While this is apart, just get a shot right in the middle of it. And just let it run to the front. What I do is just kind of let it run into the front. Start at the back, let it run, and then flip it over and let it run the other way. This way you'll get plenty right out at the tip. So now you have a complete lip of 64th plywood along the parting line. Now we'll do the other clamshell, the same piece. Put a nice 64th plywood lip on the whole outer edge of the piece. Now what you have to do is, we have the two clamshells made, they're pressed back. I got to drill a hole through both sides. I want to get the hole centered, of course. Through the balsa and both of the pieces of plywood, but not out the other side if I can help it. That's kind of like, if it goes through, we have to make a little balsa plug, that's all. So I'm trying to mark this, try to get it centered. See about where we want these so they're in the middle. You could measure it out, I don't think it's that important. But it is important if you're doing the second one, you have to make a left one and a right one. You don't want to have, you know, two lefts or two rights like anything else. Okay, then we're going to set the screws in and the blind nuts in there. Now I just want to take a piece of 1/8 inch plywood and mark up a little bit so I can get my 3/48 blind nuts in there. Drill up some holes and get these little tabs that I'm going to glue inside the 64th plywood. See, they're going to have to go inside behind there, and I'm going to have to line up the hole with the drilled hole, line up the nut, the back of the nut. So I'll have two blind nuts in a piece of 1/8 inch plywood behind the 64th plywood. Alright, so we have the screws set in position now. They're in little blocks. I'm going to pull this apart so you can see it. 1/8 inch plywood inside, using the 64th plywood for reference. We'll just take out the little, these are 3/48 blind nuts and 3/48 Allen head screws. Right. Okay, we can pull the wheel pan apart now. Make sure we don't have a drop of glue on it. That's always a thrill. Okay, and what we have, I'm going to do this on a macro lens. On one side we just have the Allen screw going through a little hole and a little block of plywood in there, just so you need a little support. You could probably glue a washer in there just as well, but there's a little block of plywood in there for support. And the other side, we have the blind nut in a little block of plywood. You can see the little block of plywood, and when you glue the block of plywood in, just line up the hole with the nut. That's a self-aligning little gizmo. And of course, once we've finished them, you'll be able to replace the wheel. You can use a wheel collar in there. We can replace a wheel right at the field. We could go to heavier or lighter wheels, bigger or smaller wheels to raise it up for prop clearance. An example, if we'll clear this when we actually cut it out, and we're not going to be able to do that today. We'll cut it out for 2 1/4 inch wheels, and then if we need a little more prop clearance, we can run 2 1/2s even, or if we need a little less, if we're going to wind up using a smaller prop. You know, we can keep the prop clearance and keep the gear right down nice and low to the ground. Alright, so that's one wheel pan, and obviously at this point in time, want to sand these plywood edges nice and smooth, and I'll do that off camera. And then the next step, and we're not going to get to do it today, is we'll cut the hole for the wheel and then get ready to start putting these on the wire. Now, today I only have a little bit of time, but I want to measure up the prop clearance on this, and basically have the grass gear already made. So what I'm going to do, I took the the mat off the table so I can reference onto a hard surface. What I want to do is kind of get the body parallel. We're again referencing with a 12-inch prop, since this has a 40. And I want to bend the wire for the wheel pants, and it looks like I can make the wires, if I'm going to use the same wheels, 1 inch shorter than I now have them. So if I use 2-inch wheels, I can make 2-inch wheels, I can make them 1.5 inches shorter. 40. Can make these 1 1/4 inches, 1 3/8 shorter. Okay, so what I did, I measured the clearance between, and I want to leave at least 1/4 inch of prop clearance. So I really can shorten up the landing gear wires now, just the wires. I can shorten up the wires 1 inch. Now, of course, with the grass gear, we want to have a little bit of extra prop clearance, and we want the wheels a little bit further forward than necessary. But now that I'm going to make up the wheel pants, and again, normally I would want to fly the plane, but because we have this tremendous time constraint, we may not even be able to go to the Nationals this year. It looks like we're going to get the house very soon, and the real estate agent is out working on a deal right now. So you may very soon, within 2 or 3 months, be seeing a brand new shop. Let's hope. And if you don't, well, you never can tell, what's going to happen around here. Every day is a mystery. But we're going to try to bend up the wires now based on the fact that we want to fly this plane with the balance point at 20%. We've got the balance point at 20%. We've got the grass gear way forward, 15%, even a little bit more because we have smaller wheels. And so we'll make the landing gear legs just a little bit shorter and a little bit further back, and we'll try, at least initially, start this off using 2-inch wheels. So the first step is going to be, we have it on a foam pad. We'll pull out one of the landing gear legs, and then I want to sight down from having one on and one off so I can marry each wire up to the gear that's already been bent. This way I don't, in this dimension, I have that pretty well set where I want it, and if anything, the wheel pant setting will be just slightly behind that. So what we'll try to do is, I'll take one off first, and then marry the first, bend one wire and marry it up to this. Then I'll take this one off and marry up the angle to this one. And that's always a good way to do it. If we're going to change the angle of attack of the landing gear, say you want to bend the landing gear forward, well, take one gear off, bend one forward, then take this one off and bend this one to match that one, or vice versa. Don't just try to bend them both forward, because then you'll lose your reference point. So that's definitely one good way to do it. It's really nice to have these long ball end drivers for pulling these little screws out. Nice little way of getting the screws and caps off. Now what we want to do is get the angle. If you see the angle of the wire here, I don't want to have the angle this way, that way, whatever. So the first bend in the wire is going to be that I get this angle facing forward to match the wheel on the outer side. Now I take out my little pattern that has all the measurements for the gear and grass gear and tweeners and Harleys and everything. So I use this for a little pattern. And I know I want to make the leg 1 inch shorter, so I'm going to put that right on here right now. And go ahead and mark the bender. I usually have the bender marked. Let's see if we can dial in. So that I place the wire here, and then as it bends, well, you know, I can do one bend from this angle, one from this, and it'll all pretty much come out the same. This is kind of a homemade rinky-dink bender, but of course we do bend thousands of pieces of wire for horns and whatever on this, so I guess I shouldn't laugh at it. That's a nice piece of equipment, and you can buy a professional bender from Harry Higley. I'm sure it's a lot better. But anyway, we do want to have the pattern, and we'll go get some 1/8 inch wire and get ready to bend up the wire here. Now once I have one wire bent into the shape that I'm happy with as a starting point, what I do is I go over to the, this is now, let me see if I can zero in on this. What I do is from the gauge I mark all the spots on the gauge where the wire ends before I actually put the wire in and make the bend. And so from having all those little spots on the gauge, I pretty much can make an unlimited amount of landing gear wires now at various lengths just by changing the little spot on the gauge. Now what I do is I line up the gauge, see exactly what spot on the gauge I was using. Okay, take the old wire out, put the new wire in. You can always make both of the ends just a little bit longer, it won't hurt. Remember, the wire gets shorter as you bend it. The first bend is done. Reverse it for the second bend. And again, I just check it with either one of the wires. I have little marks on here. Okay, need to adjust this in a little bit. And what I'll do, of course, is go back to the plane and double check right on the plane that I have the right. I lose about 1/4 of an inch on every bend. But this is, all of these major bends have to go in now. Okay, marry it up, make sure they're the same. In this case, they're real close. Okay, now I want to get the last bend on here. And what I have this mark way out here. Okay, it's a good idea if you're going to do this. You can practice a little bit and get all your angles right. Now, if you look down at the wire, you can see the alignment between the two wires. Yeah, I'm trying to do the focus job here. I'm trying to line them up so they're parallel. You see how the one, you really can't see it that well. The one in the foreground has to go back just a little bit. So here's where the fine-tuning comes in. You need to fine-tune the wires and get that angle. Before anything happens, that angle has to be right. Now, if you don't get this angle right, what happens? Somewhere, let me just tweak this back. Somewhere after you've made the wheel pants up, they're not going to line up. They're going to look stupid. They're going to look like a duck with his feet hanging down. This looks straight, and we've already gone through this on a video. I won't spend a lot of time here. We've got all the angles we need. All right, now I'm just bending these until I get the alignment on both of them just about right. And there's a lot of give and take here. You have to keep putting it in. Bend it just a little bit. You don't want to put a lot of bends back and forth in this wire either. That's not such a desirable thing. Okay, we've got that angle pretty much under control now. Now, if you look down, the two wires, they both have the same angle on them. See how we can go right down and mirror image the angle? And we have the legs exactly the same length. Now we want to get the axles parallel. Next step is to get the axles as parallel as we possibly can. Okay, now we have that that angle of going up, the rake angle on both of them perfect. Now you got to make sure both of these are seated in. In fact, if you really want to do this perfect and really be accurate, you can bolt the little covers back on. But I just want to get this roughed out now. Now I want to make sure that the two axles are completely parallel in this dimension, and they're not. Okay, this is now. This one needs a little more of a bend, and you have to keep really futzing around with this little by little, and be patient. You get the axles to track everything true before you make the wheel pants, because once you put the wheel pants on, you really have a very limited amount of bending front and back, especially with wing gear. And if the axles don't track, they're going to chatter, they're going to be a pain in the neck from the day one. Okay, I'm guessing we're real close now. Next my pliers. Just keep getting the bends until you get exactly that angle that you want. And the trick here is you just can't rush this. You just can't. I don't know of anybody that can just knock this out in one shot. You got to keep going back and forth. You want this angle. You want the axle straight. You want it straight in this dimension up against the ruler. Very, very important. This is probably the most important one of all. And you want the two legs parallel. When you have those three dimensions, you can go right out and make the wheel pants. Now at this point we pretty much have all the angles the way we want them. Real happy with the way that's worked out. We're going to pull off the legs now and start laying out exactly how we want to make the fairings and how we want to attach the pants to the wheel pant halves. Now we want to make sure here that we have the proper clearance. You can see we have no prop clearance now at all without the wheels on. So we want to put the wheels on and then start lining this up to try to get some prop clearance, the amount that we want. And now this is the beauty of having take-apart wheel pants. We can go in there and take out the wheels. We can put fatter wheels, heavier wheels, lighter wheels, any various combination of the Dave Brown ultralight wheels, Fox wheels, whatever, to get the vertical CG right and to control prop clearance. For instance, we have a 12-inch prop on here now and 2-inch wheels. Well, if we want to run a 12 1/4, we can just put 2 1/4-inch wheels or a little bit heavier wheels on it. That's the beauty of having this, that it's a take-apart system. Now we have a system that's just as good as like the grass gear, the fuse-mounted gear, where you can just pull the wheel pants off right at the field. We can pull the wheels right off of this right at the field, switch them, change the prop clearance, change the landing and takeoff habits of the plane. It'll be a very good trim feature to have this, well worth the effort. Now I put the 2-inch on here just to see, and what I want to try is the same old test. I want to make sure that when I put the nose, now it stays that way. It means the gear, at least for now, too far back. I want to have it that as soon as you let go, it drops back. Otherwise, what happens in the wind, when you try to take off upwind, it'll always nose over. So we'll bend the gear forward just a little bit. You also notice we made the gears long enough that we do have plenty of prop clearance here, so we can trade away a little bit of prop clearance for a little bit of rake forward. Now what I'll do is I'll just take one wire out here, bend it forward just a little bit. I got my little vise here. A little bit at a time, and here's where the fine-tuning part comes in, until I just have it that it just doesn't want to have that tendency to nose over when you let go of it. It should always fall backwards. Okay, now you could look at that angle. Let's see if I can dial in that angle. I don't know if I can. And you can see one is raked further forward than the other. Got the rake further forward on that. So now we'll take the back one, pull the back one out. We've got quite a bit this way. That's a little more than I wanted, but we'll try it anyway. Just put it in a vise, give it a little bit of a bend, And again, then we'll go back and check all the angles. Make sure everything is, we haven't disturbed any of the angles of being parallel. Nope, a little bit more. And you got to realize this just takes time. There's no one-shot deals here. This is a time-consuming thing. Now we've probably gone too far. Yeah, a little bit too far. In fact, I can just bend it back. A little bit further forward. Okay, now we have to check all the other angles. That's the whole trick. You make sure we haven't disturbed. Sometimes you disturb all these angles when you do these kind of things. Okay. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. Now we do the same thing. We check the prop clearance without the wheels because the axles are now further forward. And we'll just put the wheels on and check the prop clearance again that way. Okay, by doing the same test now with the wheels on, it looks like we're really closing in on having this. That's about what we want. So we want to get the body parallel to the ground so we can roll a takeoff and still have a 1/4 inch or so, 3/8 of an inch of prop clearance. It looks like we have that on a 12-inch prop. Okay, we're ready to make the wheel pants. Alright, that's the end of this tape. We're at the end. We'll fill it out with a couple of nice photographs. And on the next video, we'll try to show the assemblage and finishing off and matching the paint on these wheel pants. And hope that it helps you improve your modeling skills. Not only that, at the same time enjoying it. See you on the next tape, and we'll finish it up with some pictures from the albums. Now, some of the pictures that have just come in, this is Walt Russell's class, Walt Russell of Washington. You can see the rare bear over here in this rack that he's made. Well, his school kids, he teaches a bunch of school kids aero modeling, and they're all making Acromasters. And we wish him luck with all his students. Keep sending the pictures in. This is a picture we got a while back from Rick Fetters in Des Moines, Iowa, who built a Cardinal. And unfortunately lost it in an accident. Very unfortunate accident, but nice picture of his Cardinal. It was red and white. Here's a nice picture of the Aero Modeling Club, one of the Aero Modeling clubs I visited when I was in Poland. Notice Peter wrote this. Peter's water, me. Peter, we know you're Polish. We know it. You don't have to prove it. Nice guy, super nice guy, Peter's water, and his Aero Modeling Club. This is Klaus Makis' Bipe. You notice the interconnected flaps? What should be ailerons are now interconnected flaps. The note that he sent with it is that it flies very well. Klaus Makis of West Germany, which of course now is Germany. Here's a picture from the '89 Nationals of me giving Billy Werwidge. Bill got second that year, I got fourth. Giving him a nice launch. This was the typical Cleveland launch system where you hold the plane off the ground to the last minute. Works real well. Bill was developing the OPS here, and I was flying the Red Baron. So we had a good trip. We had a real good trip cross country, memorable, and really did enjoy flying with the guy that summer. In fact, I enjoy flying with him all the time. Cool guy. One of the heroes, one of my heroes anyway. Mr. Aries, Mr. Junar, Mr. I don't know. You know, what I'm going to do about these Cleveland launches. He's got me holding this thing up all summer. I guess he just figured I'd get tired. But notice those biceps. There's an old picture of Bob Emmett. Bob Emmett, usually one of the judges at the Nationals, team trials, whatever. Always good at paying back his dues to stunt. Bob, you're a hero. You're a good guy. I don't care what Paul Walker says about you. You are okay. Paul, he's okay. Now, no more no Bob Emmett jokes here. You're okay, Bob. Quiet, Paul. The canopy and slide back canopy in Bart Klapinski's plane, one of his old planes, real old planes. Here's a photo from Hank de Jong and from the Netherlands, and he stayed with Lou Dutker and myself with another fellow flyer from Israel, Rosenberg, and we had a good time out at Bradley's with this ship right here. We really did have a good time. I got to fly. No, this isn't the one I got to fly. He had 2 of these. Anyway, he was a heck of a guy. Really had a good time with him. Hank de Jong. Another picture from Peter's Water of the young kids in his Polish Aero Modeling Club. Looks like they build better than Jeff Stiefel. Now we'll close out with this picture from the Washington Nationals, Washington State Nationals. What a guy. Had the best summer of my life with Billy Werwich. What a guy. Hope to see you on the next video. Hope you've had a good time with this. Checking out all the little things we're doing at the shop here, picking up some little tips. And very soon, by the way, we'll be moving to our new shop. Very, very soon. Within 3 months, we'll be in our new shop.